Welcome to Central Valley Talk, the COVID-free zone. We don't have COVID here. You know why? Because we wear masks and we distance. We have a couple guests, and as you're going to see here in a second, we're about 6 feet apart. Doesn't look like it on the screen there, but I'm going to take my mask off because we're safely distanced. And you guys don't have the COVID?
We don't.
As far as we know, right? I mean, we could have it and be carrying it around.
Absolutely.
I don't have it. But you ladies, Celina Cooper and Amber Ratzlaff, you guys do a podcast.
We do, yeah. It's called State of Murder.
Kind of a true crime podcast.
Yeah.
And State of Murder. How many episodes have you had?
I think
We're on. We just finished. We just posted our 21st episode.
Oh my goodness! So, these guys starting out the only last 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
You've been at it. Do you do one a week?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do one a week, and we go state by state. So we've made it 21 states through so far.
Without repeating one.
Yeah. So we haven't repeated yet. The goal is once we finish, we'll kind of circle back around.
And so far, it's been all about murder.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you started with California. Which murder would that be?
We covered. We wanted to do a local one because we're from Fresno, so we covered the Marcus Wesson murders.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you cover it? Do you dissect it or kind of go over the facts? Or
Yeah, so we both do research. So that one was our first episode, so it was unique in that we both did research on the case. Mm-hmm. So we read books, we looked at news articles.
Well researched.
Yeah, so we try to bring as much of the facts to the case as possible. And
now, that's a lot of work. Did you say you do them once a week? Or?
Yes.
Wow, that much research for a week then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you Google like the newspaper articles and stuff?
Yeah.
We
Probably pretty
do.
helpful.
We find. I read a lot of the court cases if they're available. Books that have been written on it. And a lot of times there are articles. If you can find local newspapers, they give a lot of information. And so just kind of delving deep, and it just depends on each case is so different. And we do try to focus on lesser known cases. So we typically don't do the typical serial killer.
Yeah.
And then we really want to focus a lot on the victims and their strength. And a lot of times there's some survivors, and so their perseverance. And so that's what we like to focus on instead of just the murderer, which is what usually the news focuses on.
Now, before we get too far, the name of the podcast, as you can see on the banner we've hung up back here, State of Murder. And where do they watch it?
So we can be found pretty much anywhere
Any
that
of the
podcasts are found.
apps.
Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, anywhere really. So
I don't have a podcast app, but I'm going to learn how to do this. I watch Dr. Phil, and he goes in his audience and grabs someone's phone and says, "This is how you add the app to your phone so you can listen to my podcast." Now, do you have other presence out there, like Facebook or webpage?
yeah, so we have our website, stateofmurder.com, where it also has like bonus content. Sometimes we tell. So
Does
we
this
like
hit there?
Yeah.
There's the website.
So we like to end our podcast with what we call super fun state facts. So just to kind of lighten it after we talk about
About the
such heavy
state where the
stuff.
murder was? And tell
Yeah.
about the state.
Yeah, and we
Kentucky's a
even do-
volunteer state, or Tennessee, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we find a fun state fact, and depending on the cities that we do, we find a fun fact about that city. And so sometimes we have personal stories. Amber's traveled a lot, so she always has fun stories about the Midwest states. So we post bonus content.
Okay, so the web address is
www.stateofmurder.com.
stateofmurder.com. You can find them anywhere. Go to any podcast app and just type State of Murder,
Yeah.
or are there a bunch named that?
No, I think we're the only one.
That's nice. So it's easy to find.
Yeah.
And does it come out at a set time each week?
So we post live on Thursdays. The episodes are scheduled to post at midnight Pacific time.
So Friday, people go see it on Friday. Unless
Well,
there's
no, Thursday morning.
So-
Thursday at midnight, like the
Wednesday.
Wednesday
at
at midnight, so Thursday. So,
So Thursday you can listen.
You can stay up to midnight and watch it on Thursday, right? Or sometime Thursday you can start watching. But all week, can you tell when and where people watch, or
Yeah.
how often they click in, or what time
Oh,
they
yeah.
click in? All that stuff. Huh?
Yep.
Yeah, so we kind of track. We actually have a lot of international listeners, which is nice. So a lot of people from the UK listen to our podcast, which is very cool.
When I look at our numbers here, and I try never to look because I'm always disappointed, but why are people from Japan and Russia and all these crazy places watching? I don't even know how they find us, but you find the same thing. People from,
Yeah.
you don't
Oh, yeah.
know them, or
Yeah, no, all over the world. We're always amazed because I'm like, I do know some people internationally, but I'm like, I don't know people in that country, and I don't know anybody in that country. So it really is exciting when you get that, because it's like, oh, somebody from is interested in, first of all, the United States, and then listening to our little podcast we have. So
And they're not doing it because they've heard of it, and they're searching through podcasts. Oh, this is State of Murder explains the whole show, just the word. So
Yeah.
that's kind of nice. So
Yeah.
have you had any ones that murders that you've covered that you kind of question the outcome of the trial, of conviction?
Oh. Yeah, I think we've had a few, specifically our Oklahoma episode. So both of us had really intense cases for that one. Mine was the Tulsa Race Massacre
Oh, yeah.
that
That
took
was
place
back
in the
in
20s.
20s, yeah.
Yeah, so that one, obviously the outcome was very upsetting because it was a massacre of
They didn't
the
convict
people.
anybody, huh?
Nope. Nope.
Wow.
In fact, they deputized citizens to go out and continue to
Yeah.
attack this community. So.
I think a lot of us only heard about that this year. Why do you think
Mm-hmm.
that is?
I think, and we talk about it too on the podcast, is just back in the 20s especially, they hid all of that from the media. They made it look like, oh no, they used to call them the Tulsa Race Riots because they wanted to make it seem like
the race
Black Wall
riot,
Street
yeah.
was rioting against the rest of the community. So I think it definitely got swept under the rug, and even though it became more known, I really wanted to cover it because, like, you're right, a lot of us just heard about it this year. We
Yeah.
never learned about it in school, so
No.
it was something that we felt
Well, I
needed
learned-
more attention.
I learned about it on your podcast. Just kidding. But I'll go listen because it's a
Yeah.
new subject for me and I'm fascinated by it, and that'd be a good place. So I go back and listen to the whole podcast, right?
Yeah.
Very good, very good. Now, any real controversial thing you covered or surprise? That was a surprise to Tulsa, but
I think we do we are kind of a little bit opinionated and very vocal when it comes to our beliefs. And so we try to focus on, I know in Montana I talked about a lot of Native American women are being murdered and raped there, and nobody's discussing it
to this day.
to this day. So they have a lot of teenage girls who are just like coming up dead, and they can't decide whether or not it's murder or natural causes, but it just seems really kind of suspicious. So I kind of go into that, and then also talk about 2 murders that did occur with some Native American women in Montana. We just covered one of our last episodes was some vigilante justice by a whole town that ended up murdering the town bully, and nobody has been found guilty of that murder. So there's
What
just
kind of stand do you guys take on that, or are you just reporting the facts?
I think we kind of talk about our opinion because, we feel like, hey, it's our pot. We want to share our opinion. So we were kind of, I think, both in a weird place where we're like, this guy sucked. And so he was like a bully and he didn't treat people right. And
he was horrible.
yeah, he was not a good person. But then on the same side, we also don't agree with vigilante justice.
No.
So it was kind of like
It's
a
too
tough
bad
thing.
that guy's dead. Right?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
So, and we sometimes have differing beliefs, and when we talk about it, we're both very open about, like, I'm very avidly against the death penalty, and Celina kind of is a little more open to the idea, and so we talk about that. We really focus on, I'm a social work major, so I really focus on the mental health and hopefully some preventative, so really being honest about how childhood trauma affects a lot of people and affects brain development, and so kind of looking into that. So if we do talk about the murderer, kind of really trying to delve into what could have caused them to become somebody that murders.
That could murder,
Yeah.
And we know a lot more about that now than we did 50 years ago, right? It's
Absolutely.
really coming out now. So do you have like a fry him button, like fry that guy or
So
something?
my stance on it is definitely a little like, I feel like personally, if that happened to someone that I cared about, it's very easy to think like, okay, you would want revenge, but at the same time, I recognize that it's not a perfect system, and I can't stand by something that could potentially murder innocent people.
Right.
So, I don't support it, but I also just, I'm not avidly against it. In certain
You see more and
situations.
more of these cases where they're getting people out of prison because and they're
Yeah.
on death row. They're going to kill them. They're going to fry them.
Yeah.
Do you guys see any of those cases? Have you covered any of those?
I did cover one of those cases. What state was it? Was it Louisiana?
It might have been.
And yeah, there was a guy who got railroaded and found guilty, and he wasn't, and I think a lot of it had to do with his race. And so he was finally free, but he took a lesser sentence instead of, so he went manslaughter, time served, instead of first-degree murder. But
They're still convicted.
so he still
Yeah.
has that on his record, even though, but it was like go through a whole new trial, not know the outcome, or take this, even though most people believe he didn't have anything to do with the murder. And so some people just get real railroaded. There's sometimes a really central focus on one person, and then they don't open their eyes to other instances. So we do definitely talk about that. And it is coming out more and more, especially with DNA evidence, that sometimes people are wrongfully convicted.
Wow. I guess the number one goal has to be get out of prison. I'll plead to anything if you let me out, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I keep babbling on, asking you guys a million questions. Anything you guys want to talk about? A case or your show or?
No, I mean, we're just slowly growing. Like we said, we have 21 episodes. We're starting to get a little bit more of followers on social media, so people can find us at SOM Podcast on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date. I know he was showing you guys were flashing some of our pictures. So also, too, shout out to Amber's brother who does all of our artwork for it. So all of the state
Did he do these
graphics.
shirts?
He
The
did.
graphics?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he did
Very
our
cool
State of
graphics.
Murder shirts. And then shout out to my brother as well. He did our little intro theme. So my brother's a
family
musician. Yeah, it's a family thing. Our brothers are
Absolutely.
helping us out. So.
I tell you, the biggest problem we have here is that people want a theme song. They grab something off YouTube or something, then the whole episode gets thrown off the air because it's
Yeah.
copyrighted music. So you have your own.
Yeah,
How that
so
problem?
yeah, we reached out to our brothers and said, "Hey,
Luckily
help us
we-
out."
Yeah, luckily we have artistic family. I am not in that genre of person, so I'm very happy about that. And then also, I think we do take not requests, but if somebody knows of a case that's lesser known, we're just traveling. So, Minnesota's our next state that we're stopping at.
Nice.
And we always are welcome. So my dad actually recommended a case for Celina to tell in Nebraska, because that's where I'm originally from. And so we always want to help spread the word, especially if it's somebody that's a loved one or anybody that you really want your story heard. We would be happy to do that investigation and talking about it. So anybody who has, and we'll hit states again. So I already have
Yeah,
some
you're going to
names.
run out of states in about 20 more weeks, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, like we said, you can always email us at stateofmurderpodcast@gmail.com. So if you have a case, and we're getting close to the East Coast here, so if you have some cases, let us know. We'd love to do the research on them and tell their story.
All right, so State of Murder Podcast, or something about SOM on Instagram.
Yeah, so that's how you can find us on Instagram, and Facebook is at SOM Podcast.
At SOM Podcast. I bet if you start Googling State of Murder and stuff like that, you're going to start finding them
Yeah.
out there. And Thursdays. Find it Thursdays.
Yep.
It comes out
Thursdays.
way late Wednesday night, and so Thursday, or stay up all night Wednesday, and at 12:01 or something, you can watch it. State of Murder, wow, we want to talk to you guys more. This is just the most fascinating thing. That
Yeah.
these people from our community, that's our theme, by the way, COVID, right?
Yeah.
Do the whole world shut down, or are things still happening? You guys are still doing the podcast.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
If you get the COVID, she's going to get it. Vice
We
versa.
normally
record.
socially distance, so we were recording together, and then COVID hit, so we had to kind of scramble and kind of set up our own little studios in
Nice.
our houses, and so now we do it apart. We kind of Zoom.
We Zoom.
And then record it over another thing, and yeah,
Yeah, we've made it work.
we made it
Very
work.
good.
You, that's, I think that's everybody in the world right now is making it work.
Yeah, and so this is a nice break for us, too, that our routine didn't have to
By
change.
the way, have you had guests on your show?
No, we haven't yet. So, like I said, we reach out. So, if there are people who know of it or were personally involved, I mean, we'd love to hear their take on everything.
And you
So-
may move away from murder to other types of crime.
Yeah, so we never I know our title is State of Murder, but that's just because that's most of the true crime you find. But we'd definitely be
Yeah.
open to other crime cases.
Yep.
SOM Podcast, State of Murder. Go to any podcast site or application, type State of Murder. You're going to find them. By the way, you could email them too at stateofmurderpodcast@gmail.com. Celina Cooper and Amber Ratzlaff. If you are watching, a lot of our guests are driving, by the way, so don't crash trying to write this down. Call me later, and I'll give you all the information on how to access their podcast. We will be back with more Central Valley Talk right after this.
I haven't heard the name. Sorry, I haven't heard the. I'm from the Midwest, so Nebraska has Hy-Vee's too. So now I just have Hy-Vee's theme song in my head, which I haven't heard since.
What is their theme song?
Where there's a helpful smile in every aisle, shop Hy-Vee.
Wow. I like your little slogans. Our supermarkets don't have those kind of jingles.
So that's just like the second you said Hy-Vee, because like, yeah, that's where I used to shop, and I'm like, that just like popped into my head. Sorry, that just like it just kept
No,
going on.
that's okay.
Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to State of Murder. I'm your host, Celina Cooper.
I'm your other host, Amber Ratzlaff, and this week we are traveling to Iowa.
Yeah, the Hawkeye State. I've never been to Iowa, so that's not a state I've been to. So surprising. Through our tour of the Midwest. I don't even know really much about Iowa. Do you have any interesting stories from Iowa? Have you been to Iowa?
I have been to Iowa a number of times. One of my uncles lives in Pella, Iowa, which is a smaller town. I've driven through Iowa. I've been to Iowa a lot in high school. Like we used to have like kind of music festivals. So like Edge Fest was like a music festival for I grew up in the 90s. So obviously like kind of 90s grunge rock, I guess. So I went and I would go every summer there was Edge Fest, and so my friends and I would go to that. I saw Marilyn Manson in Iowa. He played, I think, in Council Bluffs, Iowa. So
What?
Yeah, one of my high school friends and I went to that concert. I wasn't a fan, she was, but she wanted somebody to go with, so I went. Marilyn Manson wasn't really my cup of tea. I mean, he's fine, but it wasn't, he wasn't my... Like, I love Sugar Ray. So, like, to put into comparison. Like, I obsessed and fangirled over Sugar Ray. And then my friend, Laura, she loved Marilyn Manson. But, I support my friends, so I went along.
Nice.
My dad's favorite movie takes place in Iowa. So, if anybody's ever seen Field of Dreams... You can go, so that happens in Iowa, so the baseball field is there if you want to ever go see it. I don't know where in Iowa, I just know it's in Iowa. I never went. But.
Very cool. Cool. All right, but before we get started, I did want to say welcome to all of our new listeners. We did get a boost in listens this week, so yay. Also, we're still steadily rising in amounts of listens. Our very first episode from California actually almost has 300 listens and plays so far, so thanks.